Okay, welcome back to Business Owners Speak. Today, I'm very excited to have Greg Kohs with Research Biz, LLC. Greg, how are you today?
I'm great today. Thank you, Matt.
Really want to thank you for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time. And like I do with everybody, if you could take a minute to tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about the business to start.
Sure, absolutely. And I want to thank you, Matt, for giving this opportunity. It's very nice to be able to open up like this, one-on-one with somebody. It's a great format. I have worked in the market research field for over 30 years now. I guess you could say I've been fortunate that I've only had one career change in my life, and it came very early, where I was working toward a PhD in history of all subjects. And the job market was just very tight for tenure track professor positions in that field, and especially in the area that I was focused on. But I did enjoy working with numbers. A lot of my work in history involved kind of quantitative assessments and looking at businesses and how licenses were adopted into military contracts, for example, and things of that nature. So I always had sort of a business and numbers angle on history, I guess you would say. And I happened to be working in the field of market research just to, help with costs and living expenses while I was in graduate school. And lo and behold, I found that I just really enjoyed going to work at the market research firm, probably a little bit more than finishing up a dissertation. So I did make a decision to change careers, I guess you would say, around 1993, and started working with a small market research practice, kind of a boutique firm. There were maybe 5 employees, and it grew to maybe 9 employees or something like that. We were working mostly with clients in the high-tech space and telecommunications and internet service providers. So I worked my way up through several companies that were on the vendor side, basically supplying market research services, either quantitative or qualitative. Quantitative meaning telephone surveys or getting into web surveys as we got deeper into the 1990s, or qualitative work, which could be focus groups or in-depth interviews. And I ended up working for a fairly large market research provider that was maybe the 20th or 22nd biggest in the United States. So we had about 135 full-time paid benefited employees, and then a phone room. If you remember those, they're not used too much anymore. I mean, you still get some telephone polling and survey taking, but most of it has migrated over to the web. And we, one of my clients there happened to be Comcast, and they appreciated my work and sort of level of attention to detail that I always gave on their projects. That when an opening came up for a market research director at Xfinity, they reached out to me to see if I might be interested. So I went over to the client side at that point. And I worked at Comcast for about 13 years. And for the last 7 of those years, I was heading the market research function for Comcast Business, which is the B2B division of Comcast, and selling primarily internet and telephone solutions to small and medium and even large enterprise businesses. And that was an interesting time. Those 7 years, Comcast Business grew from about a $2.5 billion annual division to over $8 billion. So, more than tripled in size while I was there. But 2.5 years ago, I elected to start my own business, and I formed Research Biz here in Florida. I'm located in Jensen Beach. And I have been working with a lot of the same people that I used to know through Comcast, but now they're with different companies. And it's been a very good, growth trajectory, I think. The first year was really a struggle. And last year, did considerably better. I don't know if I'm quite where I was when I was with, Comcast Business, but, there are so many benefits and joys of running your own business that can't compare to, being kind of stuck back in with the corporate world again. So it's hard for me to kind of envision going back to that, although, I suppose you always have to think it's possible, but really, I would rather just keep growing my business and be very satisfied with this until I reach, a suitable retirement age.
Okay, so obviously a successful career in corporate America, and what were kind of the feelings or the things that were happening that made you think, you know what, I can either go out and do this and take a leap of faith, or I'll just keep grinding it out, in middle America or in corporate America. What kind of led to the charge?
I think I've always had an itch to run my own business, and even when I was with International Communications Research, which was the research firm prior to Comcast, and when I was with Comcast, I was kind of trying out side gigs, I guess you would call them, and these were enterprises that I would kind of put together, usually internet based, and just kind of explore that. And honestly, the separation from Comcast, it's kind of a long story, but a lot of people were leaving the company at that time, and the entire marketing department was kind of going through some upheavals, and those are never enjoyable really for anybody, and unless you're like a glutton for punishment. And I just felt like the autonomy of being able to make a decision about whether I should say a deliverable is going to take 4 days instead of somebody screaming at me to say it's got to be done in 2 days, and it's like, okay, well, what you're going to get is going to be terrible, and here are the reasons why it takes 4 days. That type of thing. Just being more in control of not just who I'm working with, but also setting the stage or setting the table before we even engage on a particular project, so they kind of understand my perspective and point of view. And a lot of times I am trading time for quality in terms of my clients. So I want to promise them that they're going to get the best possible deliverable that my small firm can put together. But it's possible that that's going to take 5 weeks and not 4 weeks. And if they're okay with that, we have a very fruitful, mutually appreciative relationship. And so far that's really served me well in this light.
So try to, if you could, explain. Obviously, market research could be a broad term. Explain what Research Biz really does for their clients.
Yeah, well, when I first launched Research Biz, it really was kind of a continuation of the very beginning of my career, where I wanted to be able to provide quantitative research services and qualitative research services. And the quantitative nowadays is mostly web surveys. And the qualitative nowadays, especially post-COVID, that has just dramatically changed. You're no longer doing focus groups in focus group facilities or hotel conference rooms, with the two-way mirror and clients behind the glass and all of that. It's being done just like this on Zoom, and so that's kind of the thing that surprised me. I thought going into this, I would either be 50-50 or lean more toward quantitative than qualitative, but just the market demand is really more in the qualitative space, at least as far as my business has experienced. And so I would say maybe 60 to 65% of my work has been qualitative, with focus groups, virtual focus groups, and virtual one-on-one interviews. And a lot of clients have become more comfortable with the idea that it's better to get 15, 30 or 40-minute interviews where you're really pulling out the needs and the desires of a prospect or of a customer, and figuring out where there are gaps that still need attention, than to just ask 500 people, do you like this red one or the blue one? Do you what's your income level? And then trying to do some crazy segmentation based on the results from 500 surveys, when the fact of the matter is a lot of the people completing those types of surveys either aren't paying attention or really aren't, behaviorally or demographically don't reflect what they're saying on the on the questionnaire, because they're just trying to complete the survey as quickly as possible, get their reward and or their incentive, and they really don't care about being consistent about their answers throughout the survey. But I've developed some techniques that really help to bump up the quality of even our quantitative surveys. So I don't want to cast a lot of fear in the eyes and ears of the folks watching or listening to this right now. You can still do great quantitative research, but it's just, you got to be a lot more careful nowadays than you were 10 or 15 years ago in terms of respondent quality.
Sure. So give us an example of, your company tasks you to seek out answers. Can you give us an example of kind of what your research, kind of the fruit that it bears and what,
Sure.
The way it helps companies?
Yeah, I can give you, recent examples, and often have included new product concept testing. So it's an established company. They've already got their standard operating procedure array of products or services that they offer to their customers or their clients, but they're looking to grow. They're looking to expand. Maybe the landscape is changing a little bit and more of their clients are asking for some additional service that they've never provided before, but they know that they need to get into that space. So maybe they come up with a prototype, a description of a product or a service that they could potentially offer, but they don't want to go all in and build it out without having first done some preliminary research to see, is this truly, something that is needed, and is their brand a trustworthy provider of that? Like, do they have sort of permission to play in that space?
Right.
And also kind of like feature prioritization. Maybe they can do 10 different things and they're like ready to fire off all 10 of those as like, here's why you should buy our new product. It can do this, 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 and this. And at that point, you've kind of overwhelmed the prospect. The research can kind of help to show, we talked with 15 people, or we surveyed 200 people, and here is how they ranked, all of those features. And frankly, these bottom two features, people not only didn't care about them, they also thought that they're like unnecessary and take away from, some of the other features. So you can give that type of feedback to either a product design team or a product development team, or a go-to-market, marketing team that helps them to reshape or recharacterize a new product that they're hoping to launch to the market. And for a few $1,000s, better to kind of learn and create an ideal version of the concept or the product before it's rolled out. Save all that money up front in terms of design and development resources, because you've gotten the learning from the research. So that's kind of one example, and it seems to happen quite a bit with my clients. They're seeking to explore a new space, and I help them to make more informed decisions before they fully dive into that space.
And I would assume that from time to time you have to deliver news/information that they maybe weren't expecting or didn't want to hear, especially people that were behind a certain product or an idea. How does that relationship go? I mean, you're just stating the facts, but
yeah, I had one interesting encounter where the product, as it was first presented to me, I was able to show the client without even having done the research. It was just from personal memory that I had seen this product before back in the early 90s, and the product eventually failed for a very key reason. And I pointed that reason out to them, and they were kind of like, wow, we didn't even think about that, which kind of surprised me that they weren't aware of this, kind of predecessor to what they were doing. So that was an uncomfortable conversation to have, because it had the potential to kind of pull the rug out from under their whole plan. But they did respond in kind and said, well, we could maybe address that by making this change and this change. And so it wouldn't be necessarily like a live interactive experience. It would be a 15-second delayed experience, or something like that. Right. So so that that one worked out well. I have had some other situations where, the results don't come in as stellar or, predictive of success that the client had hoped for. But you do always try to find ways to explain how, okay, we came in here, you were hoping for here, but maybe we could split that difference if we made this change, and this change to the product, or something like that, so that at least you give them some hope that there's still potential for this, even if it didn't meet an expected threshold. But yeah, it is a difficult conversation to have, and some clients are fully appreciative of it, and maybe even secretly there were people on the team who were doing the research to hope that they finally get an unbiased, independent third party to say, you've got it. Yeah, you can't put lipstick on this pig.
Right. And I'm assuming on the flip side, there's some great value to, and feelings of accomplishment really for your research helping companies, make big and important decisions.
Yeah, it is, it's almost a little bit like overwhelming to me as a person, that like, wow, we did this research and I said that, you've got a great thing here, and here are even some ways to improve it. And then 6 months later, 12 months later, you actually see it on the market, or there's a TV commercial for it. And you're like, hey, I had a lot to do with that, but it is a really good feeling and very rewarding.
Yeah, that's great. So Greg, there are people out there looking to take the leap in either starting their own business or buying a business. As a business owner yourself, and still a fairly new one, what's some advice you would potentially give someone in that position?
Oh boy, my biggest advice, I would say, is that no matter what business you're starting or what business you're acquiring, you probably feel pretty comfortable with the daily ins and outs of how to run or manage or provide services in that arena. But there is a whole host of other essential tasks and needs that go into building a business that, at least for me, I would be taking way more time learning how to do that correctly and properly than if I just bite the bullet and say, I've got to hire somebody to support that. So in my case, that was, for example, a bookkeeper. I didn't want to have to be tracking and reconciling the bank account each month and all of that. So I hired a great bookkeeper locally here in Stewart. She's great. So that was one. Another one is kind of like video production of marketing collateral. I found a great freelancer out in California, and I've utilized her several times to kind of build promotional videos for me, rather than me going into whatever the heck software it would be to create transitions and things like that. So I'd rather be focused on the market research than videography. So those are a couple of examples. And then even within research, I know for myself, when I do quantitative research and I get the data back, I'm perfectly fine with getting an Excel file and sorting columns and doing count ifs and VLOOKUPs and things like that. But to truly analyze research data, you really should have a cross tabulation where you have the total respondents, and 60% said yes and 40% said no, but then you have male and female respondents, and young, middle-aged, and elderly, and low income, middle income, high income, across a banner. So you have this grid of data. I'm not so great at putting together crosstabs, and there are people out there who do it, like that. So what would take me 2 days to get right, somebody else can do it correctly in a few hours. So that's another thing that I outsource. So that's my big recommendation. Stick to your knitting, what you're really good at. Make sure that you're hands-on and doing it, but quickly identify the essential aspects of your business that you don't really benefit by doing yourself, and go ahead and outsource those elements, and you'll thank yourself many times over that it's just not worth the headache for me to for example, do my bookkeeping when I can pay whatever it is, $85 a month or something, to have somebody else do it.
Right. That's great advice. Stick to your strengths, but understand there's other areas that need to happen. And everybody gets so expense conscious. But what they're forgetting is the time that they're spending on things that someone else can do much quicker, exactly as you said, is time they could be focused on growing their business, right? And finding new clients and finding customers. So always important to keep that trade-off in mind. That's wonderful advice. And Greg, really interesting business. And, I'm sure I'll sit and watch TV tonight and see a commercial from some product that came from some of your research. But all in all, really, really happy to have you today. Thank you so much for taking the time. And we certainly wish you the best of luck with Research Biz, LLC.
Thank you very much, Matt. I appreciated this opportunity, and thanks for doing this.
All right, my pleasure.